Hello and welcome to the Reformation Red Pill podcast. I am your host, Joshua Hames. And today we've got an exciting episode for you guys. And they're always exciting and they're always very, very special. Today we're going to be talking through the new Christian right, the new right, where conservatism is, where it's headed. Nick Fuentes, Christian Nationalism. And I want to talk through some of how the right has been fracturing over the last 3 months, what that means and how Christians should be responding to it. But first, before we get into all of that, I got to introduce some very special guests. So I'll bring them up forthwith. And here they are. Oh, yeah, that's a couple of handsome faces. All right. John Harris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit. Who are you? What do you do? And how can people find you and your work?
So I've been on your podcast once before, Josh. People might know me from that. I host the Conversations That Matter podcast, and you can go to johnharrispodcast.com if you want to listen.
Yeah, and last time I had you on, we were talking through similar things. It's just now we're talking about those things few months and a different president down the line, and things have kind of shifted and moved. So I'm excited to get your take on all this stuff. And Andrew Isker, who are you? What do you do? And how can people find you and your work?
Yeah, I am a pastor living in Jackson County, Tennessee, and of a Reformed church. And I also write and podcast, do things like this. And I post at on x.com at Boniface Option. And so, yeah, I'm thankful for you having me on.
I'm looking forward to it. I love both of you guys. I've appreciated both of your works. I've read your books. I've benefited greatly from your podcasts and your posts on X. All three of us we're very concerned with politics and the culture war, and we're concerned. So you sound like some concerned bros. I don't mean concerned in that way. We mean we care about it. We care about it. And so I'm excited to bring you guys on to get your take on where things are at right now. We've been through something of a vibe shift over the last, since the inauguration of Donald Trump. There was a lot to be excited about. And then that vibe shift, I feel like it lasted for a few months. And then it kind of took a turn really over the last, 3 or 4 months, really since the Charlie Kirk assassination. A lot of people, had hoped that the right would kind of come together after that, kind of realize the existential threat that Christians and conservatives are facing. But that's not really how it's been. And a lot of people I've noticed are kind of blackpilling. I was actually just at a talk that Aaron Renn gave a couple of days ago here in Nashville. And I like Aaron Renn. For those of you who are unfamiliar with him, he gave us the positive world, neutral world, negative world, basically talking about how Christianity is regarded in the culture. A very, very helpful paradigm. But a lot of us left the talk thinking like, man, he's blackpilling. A lot of people are blackpilling on the future of our Commonwealth here in the United States. I'm not. I see problems. I see concerns, but I don't feel that same sense of dread or blackpill. So yeah, before we get into like Nick Fuentes or anything like that, before we get into that, I want to ask both of you what political or cultural issues you're currently concerned about, something that you might be tempted to blackpill about, let's say, and some political or cultural trends that you're excited about, that get you excited about the future. So I'll pass it over to you first, John. What are you concerned about right now? What is taking up your what is tempting you to blackpill, if anything, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh. I think the move towards wanting to value natural order realities is something that I'm positive about. Even if that is taken in directions it shouldn't, I think just the fact that we're thinking in that way is a positive thing. The thing that I'm probably the most negative about, and I could obviously give you a number of examples, but right at this moment, the top of my list is the epistemology crisis that I see happening on the right, because I think there is differences over a vision for the good and what that should look like. and those are fair discussions to have. I did a whole podcast on that topic alone, but I think a bigger shift, and it's not so much a split, it's a fracturing, is over how do we actually even know what reality is and who do we trust. And it seems like what's happened in a very short period of time is, as the institutions have failed because they didn't live up to their own standards, we have cast aside standards themselves. And I don't think people are consciously doing that, but I think it just inevitably is the way that this has panned out. And what's taken the place are personalities on the internet, which is a very egalitarian place. And you can say anything you want at any time. You don't have to substantiate it. You don't have to have an editorial team approve it. You don't have to think about awards you might receive or punishments you might get, including getting fired. There's no limitations on taking bribes. There's no peer review. You can just go out there and say whatever you want. And I think Candace Owens is obviously the prime example right now of someone who just says stuff that isn't necessarily verifiable, defends it with, I'm just asking questions, and other big media influencers are defending her along those lines. And it's just very sad to me, because what I've noticed over the last 2 weeks even is 3 weeks, major media figures on the right have gone from liking each other to hating each other, in some cases back to liking each other. It's so volatile. It's so dramatic. It's so effeminate, to be quite honest with you. And some of the players obviously are women in this particular. I see men acting like that. And I'm just thinking, like, well, what's the truth? Like, what do we actually know? And what are the limitations? We may not know things we don't know. So why speculate and talk about it too much? But there are people very sure of themselves, and they draw friend enemy lines in very, very severe ways. And you may have been on the friend line last week and you're on the enemy line this week because of a new issue that came up where we may not even know the truth, but one media figure says this and one media figure says that. And I don't know that we survived that. That's a very concerning thing for me.
That's yeah, I totally agree with that. I was looking at some of my social media analytics, and I came out critical of Candace Owens and her approach, all the concerns that you just laid out. I think lacking biblical standards of evidence before you are making like wild accusations, that sort of thing. And I came out pretty strong against that. And like within 2 days, I had lost like 10,000 followers on Instagram. It was wild, but and I thought to myself, I mean, that blew my mind, because I thought to myself, like, I would never, based on like even if there's like a conservative influencer or somebody that I like, that I respect, like if he went against my opinion, or like I would just be interested. Like, why do you think that? But so many people, and they were giving me the whole $7,000 shtick, like I'm clearly being paid by Israel. And I was like, man, if I knew I could get $7,000 for offering my sincere opinion, I might have just taken that money. But no, I'm not getting paid at all for it. But it's wild. Like people are so captured by this idea that if someone disagrees with you, they must be a sellout. They couldn't possibly be their opinion. Like it must be that they are nefarious actors. They've sold out to some grand conspiracy that's running the world. But anyway, so I share your concerns there. What about you, Andrew? Before we get into some of the meat of this discussion, what are some things that
I think mine are pretty similar. It's a thing that it's hard not to notice over the last few years, particularly since Elon made the decision to monetize content on his website, right? Like the state of discourse is abysmal. It's just slop, right? It's just it's whatever you can say that will get attention is what is rewarded. So it set up a really perverse incentive structure. And so, I mean, I saw a post by Nate Fisher the other day where he basically said that like Joel Berry and Candace Owens operate along the same incentive structure, just from different ends. And it's like, that's actually true. That's a really good filter to view things from online, where, I mean, and it goes back to the epistemological crisis that John is talking about, where there is a total collapse of trust. And so that gets captured by these, sort of cultic, personalities. And people will just believe anything the personality says, regardless of whether it's demonstrably based in reality. And they will, react angrily if you challenge it. Like you said, they'll accuse you. I mean, it's funny. Like, I'll get accused of being like pro-Israel, and also taking money from Qatar on like the same post. It's wild. And it's like, and like anybody who knows me knows what my like sincere, genuine opinion is on issues of foreign policy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like really comical, because like no one like out there on the internet has any way of ascertaining what is true or not, who is a person worthy of trusting or not. And they'll glom onto a particular figure that has gained their trust and then be manipulated by them. So yeah, like the state of discourse on the right is really awful, actually. Yeah. And so like the hardest thing, like you said, when after Charlie was killed, there was a moment at which point there could have been a tremendous degree of unity. Understanding that like these people want us dead, right? If they are willing to kill Charlie, who was not in any way some kind of extreme figure or anything like that. If they think that's somebody worthy of declaring a Nazi and a fascist that needs to die, then like any one of us that espouse any semblance of right-wing opinion will share a similar fate. And you would think that something like that could galvanize people into setting aside differences on various pet issues and keeping their eye on that ball. And that collapsed in a matter of weeks, right? It devolved into all sorts of fights over Israel. And it wasn't even just like one side that poured gasoline on the fire. It was like both sides, and making on either side, making your position on Israel the like standard for whether you were on my side or not, right? When it's like, okay, the same people want both of us dead, right? And so anyway, it was extremely disappointing to see that and see how these things have developed. It's disappointing to see that very few, and some of it is due to the collapse of trust and epistemological certainty, due to institutions that have blown through all the trust that they accrued over decades or even centuries. And so the institutional collapse in trust leads to people just not being able to have any certainty about anything. And so therefore, like you can't trust that the like most obviously pro-American president that we've had in like our lifetimes is actually doing just about everything he possibly can to make our situation better. And so, and that's part of it too. Part of the incentive structure is like people that will look at things that Trump does that are demonstrably good and be like, oh, but we still have H-1Bs here. We still have all, tens of millions of illegals here. He hasn't deported anybody. And it's like, none of them can step back and think, all right, what exactly is he supposed to do? Like Kilmar, Abrego, whatever, fake name, Star Wars name. Like you're not able to deport that guy, even though he was arrested for human trafficking. He beat his wife. He's been here illegally for decades, not allowed to deport him. And it's like, what do you want Trump to do? Right? Just jail all the judges and suspend the Constitution and just go full Abraham Lincoln. And people are like, yeah, I want him to do that. And it's just absurd because you're not able to. We're not in any position for him to be able to do that. Like he has such little power to be able to do anything. But no one is able to operate in reality because, right, you're not benefited by clicks and likes and things being shared if you're operating in reality and being reasonable and sensible and doing like actual things to make our situation better. Right, that doesn't get rewarded. There's no incentive structure for that. What does get rewarded is just saying the most outlandish things, saying the most extreme things you can, even if they're absurd and ridiculous. And it's not a good state to be in. I mean, just this week, in terms of like actual positive things that could be done, right? We were way more focused on like things Candace Owens was saying about Erica Kirk or whatever, than the fact that the Indiana GOP Senate is utterly traitorous. Right, that these people are the most disgusting vermin in the world. Right, we're concerned with that they for no reason at all, other than like someone is paying them, obviously, to or benefiting their businesses or whatever, to vote this way. Right, we don't care about those things that are real and tangible that will make things better for us. We're more concerned with like whether Brigitte Macron has a penis or not. Right. It's absurd. And so I don't know how you fix that. Right. I don't know if there's any particular way, like any easy button switch that you can flip to make people like act normal. Right. I don't know. So I'm trying to talk myself out of blackpilling about it, but I just am. It's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna keep doing my thing, and if people want to listen to, weekly world news from Candace Owens, then fine.
That's interesting. I mean, this epistemological problem. Yeah, I wonder if this is a crisis that's kind of reaching its zenith, but it was always there, and the reason why it's reaching, it's kind of the problem is growing and growing and growing is because of social media. Precisely. Like, it used to be that certain people had a stranglehold on the media, on the narrative, and basically they could split people into two different camps relatively neatly. But now, because anybody with a microphone and internet access can start a podcast and start talking, we have this, we have all of these divergent opinions and cult of personalities that are kind of cropping up, and nobody can really get a stranglehold on the narrative anymore. And the people, we're also not a virtuous people at all anymore. Like, we are totally unmoored from our history, from our people, from our place, from the faith that made us who we are, namely Christianity. And so, yeah, I mean, the scriptures tell us the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And if we've got a nation that doesn't fear the Lord, well, of course, we are going to be just blown to and fro by winds of doctrine, by any idea, by cult of personality, by an FBI fake black investigator getting online and telling us all what to believe about Charlie Kirk's assassination. Harris, what do you see as what's a solution? Like, how do we not black pill? Right? You said you wrote about it. You did a podcast episode on it. What do we do about this?
Well, on the vision of the good and the different conservative philosophies, if you will, and how there's a rethinking of the status quo. I did a podcast on that, but the epistemological problem, I think, is somewhat separate. There's convergence there, but it's we could, in a year from now, doing the same topic, be talking about completely different set of issues, and there could be a completely different cast of characters that are advocating for different positions within that, but we're still in the same place as far as being divided and not channeling our energy. To reference Nate Fisher, who's a good friend to Andrew knows him, and I know him. I don't know if you've met him, Josh, but a really good guy. And he made a post the other day that I noticed where he essentially argued that we are at the end of the process. Well, whatever this is, you said it was a zenith, Josh. Mm-hmm. Whatever this severe mistrust and I don't know, lacking standards of adjudication, conservative media focus is that's the end. Like, people are going to wake up, I guess, and there's going to be a new reward system that rewards people who have skin in the game. So people who actually are doing real things, as Andrew said a moment ago. I think there might be some merit to this. Here's the problem, though, and I retweeted Nate because I love Nate, and I think he's making a good point. He's noticing, as someone who's thinking rationally, that this makes no sense, and that because it's not producing anything qualitative, the people who actually are doing qualitative work are just about to get rewarded themselves. They're going to outpace these people who are grifters. The problem I see is this. Candace Owens, we'll pick her as an example here, although it could be many figures. She controls a lot of votes, essentially. I mean, think about it this way. Let's go outside the political world for a minute. Forget about Candace. What if Taylor Swift tomorrow said, I'm going to endorse Gavin Newsom for president of the United States? What would that do? That's a pop star who has no business really commenting on political issues because she doesn't know politics. That might sway an entire election, though. That's where we are. We really are at that point. And so you could say all day, well, let's ignore Candace. Let's ignore someone who's a celebrity talking head. The problem is we have a democratic system still, semi-democratic, right? There's still mechanisms of democracy.
That's the problem. That's the
so right. And so, well, I'm explaining the problem and then trying to get somewhat of a solution. But because of that mechanism, those people, their energies are going to be channeled into the direction of whoever that influencer is saying where they should be directed. And there's a lot of, I think, people that at early stages could be doing something good. They could be running for local office, for example. They could be going to seminary, or if they don't have the money to do that, they could just be studying on their own, getting involved in ministry. The sky's the limit. There's a lot of things tangibly that need to be done. There's voluntary associations dying all over the place. And I've encouraged on my podcast, if you're a young guy especially, get involved. You should be involved in Trail Life or the American Legion or some veterans organization. Find your local Sons of Confederate veterans or the equivalent Union one or whatever it is. Find something to get involved with in your community. I don't care if it's the fire department. But what I'm seeing, and I have actual examples in my own life that I can think about that have totally fallen into this category of their energy is being spent sitting on a computer all day, scrolling through conspiracies that there are unproven. They don't ever get anywhere. It's a hamster wheel, but their energy is spent. And what they could have been doing, they're not doing. And so what I essentially advocated is we have to address it at some point. I don't want to shift focus, and I struggle really hard with this because I don't want to give oxygen to people who are dividing the right and stuff like that. But at some point, I also have to realize they're a problem. And especially from a pastoral kind of sense, we have to rescue some people from the clutches of that, because they're going to wake up in a few years and they're going to realize they've wasted years of their life that they could have been doing something productive. So I advocate, number one, we have to call upon the Lord. I really think that he is our only option as far as it's not a Christian worldview. It's not, those things are good. It's not even a Christian culture. I advocate those things. We need God himself personally to do a work in our country. I'm more and more coming to this position. His spirit has to move in people, that they desire good and that they put their energies towards good things. With the circumstances we're in, whether he does that or not, I think we have to do what Jeremiah said to do when they were in captivity, right? Really bad case scenario. Babylon's coming in. And Jeremiah, in, I think it's chapter 29, he tells them, you're going to go into Babylon, keep living, planting vineyards, having businesses. He said, I think this is almost a direct quote. He says something like, do not let your population decrease. No, like he says that you don't diminish in numbers, keep having children. That's what we have to do. We have to keep building. It doesn't matter if the people around us are getting distracted. That has to be our primary objective, is like, what does the Lord have for us to do? Like Andrews in Gainsborough, he's building something there. He's building a church. He's part of a community. He's rooting his family down. He's trying to make wise decisions and be an example. I'm in a very blue state right now, which is has a host of problems, but I am studying right now to be an elder at my church. So this is something that consumes my time because I see it as a valuable thing for tangible people that I know on the ground, for my family. We've had some fertility issues. I mean, I'm getting extra personal here, but that's been a big focus of mine with my wife and I. How do we navigate having those kinds of issues? How do we get more healthy? How do we make sure that we can have kids? We have one daughter already. We want to keep having kids. So I'm focused on these challenges that are unique to me. And then whatever opportunities I have left over past the people in my own life, I will use my platform to try to persuade others to do the same thing I'm doing. And I don't know another way. Maybe you do, but that's my solution.
So, I mean, in summary, it's touch grass. I mean,
well, we could talk all day about like the restoration of a monarchy or so. Like there's all these ideas out there. Like if we just did this, and I'm like, well, what can we do? I'm trying to be practical here.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's great because I've been really enjoying, like, I was thinking about this today, how I just finished, I finished your book, Against the Waves, a few months back. Very, very good, guys. You should go check that out. It's very, very good. But that I think that set me down the trajectory towards really trying to study and understand liberalism and the post-liberal discussion. So I just finished Deneen's 2 books, Why Liberalism Failed and Regime Change, among some other books that are like really paradigm shifting. I've been having some fun conversations with guys, and I think they're important for us to talk through these things. And how do we fix the big giant meta issues of our society? Those are great, but really, what you just said, that becomes what you can actually do to fix these giant meta issues that we're dealing with in our society, the collapse of liberalism. And it's actually be a Christian in real life and embody that faith in your spheres of influence. And don't waste years and years, like cumulatively of your life, like staring at a rectangle. You know what I mean? I think that's key. And so I enjoy these discussions with people, and I think they're valuable. But they become counterproductive if they are not paired with real on the ground ministry and applying all of these applying your faith to your life, like on the ground. Like, are you so invested in solving all our political problems and getting to the bottom of every mystery? Meanwhile, like, your household is a mess. Meanwhile, you're addicted to pornography. Meanwhile, you're not building anything. Like, that's garbage. Like, we have got. Yeah, it's like maybe even you, dear viewer, watching this podcast, need to turn it off and go hang out with your kids for a minute. I think that's key. Now, I think these ideas are important to discuss, and I think there's also a piece of this puzzle that's inevitable. So, like, I've begun to make a career out of content creation, which is ironic given our discussion. But I'm hoping that, like you, John, that a lot of what I do can really point people to actually doing something in real life. Because that's ultimately what's needed. Andrew, you look like you were itching to say. Did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think from the micro level, from like what you as an individual can do, that's exactly right. I mean, that's stuff that, like, I talk about in my book too. Like, there's so much that you can do in terms of yourself, your family, your local community, and you should be doing them. The thing that I sort of focus on is that, right, those things are good for individuals for sure, but we definitely do need something that can work at scale. That moves the ball forward for everybody all at once. I do think it's interesting, and maybe it's just on top of mind because we discussed it on Wednesday. CJ and me, we went through a very old essay from 1992. I don't even know if you were alive in 1992, or I don't think Josh. Definitely not Josh.
I was born in 92.
Oh, you were born. You have no memory of 1992. I remember it.
That's right.
I'm old. But I was only 6 at the time. And but an essay by Samuel Francis called "Nationalism, Old and New," and we actually brought up John in the podcast. I don't know when he
Oh,
sent
did you?
that to you, John. But
Oh no.
no, it was good. It was good. We did not attack. Maybe CJ did. I don't know. I didn't anyway. But we talked about the point of the article. The thesis of it was that in the early American Republic, the fight was between republicanism, right, individual liberty, having people with Republican virtue to be able to govern themselves and live independently and so forth, versus this collectivizing nationalism that was typified first by Alexander Hamilton, then later Abraham Lincoln, and on into the late 19th century. And that nationalism won out, but it was destructive to regional distinctiveness, to localism and everything else. And so when you hear the term nationalism, that's normally what people think of is what it historically was within the American context. But today, right, republicanism is gone, and the old nationalism is more or less gone. It morphed into internationalism and globalism, and that's what is currently destroying our nation, right? Destroying it, not just in terms of like ruining the quality of life and the material, the material existence of people, but removing their historical memory, their heritage, their way of life, as and their distinctiveness as Americans, that we're just these global citizens and interchangeable with people from Somalia or Haiti or Guatemala or wherever, right? And so part of it too is that for the last 60 years, that's all there was. Even the political dialectic of conservatives and progressives was still, at the end of the day, what they agreed on was, no, America is the world empire, and we should have this global system, and we believe in all of the the liberal pieties attendant to it, whether it's egalitarianism or feminism or now pro-gay stuff and everything else. And so in the meantime, right, the people that derived absolutely zero benefit from this system are the actual historic American people, right? The working and middle class Americans have always gotten the short end of the stick with every new thing that has come down the pike. And so Francis in 92 was saying what is needed is because conservatism by its very nature is always defensive, that it always focuses on a particular single issue to defend against something the left is doing. And then as soon as that issue appears to be solved or the fight is over, all the organization immediately dissolves. And there's no grandiose collective identity or organizing principle behind which you can do that. Like it could be, you could do gun rights and abortion and the various single issues that people care about, but there isn't a thing that says, no, this is what we are, this is what we do. Whereas a new American nationalism, where it's like, no, we want our people to be benefited. Mm-hmm. We want our government to serve us and not the entire world, not foreign nations, not people that have invaded our country. We want the government to serve us. And so Trump was obviously kind of a manifestation of that, and MAGA and all of those things. But really just a nascent form of that. It's really implicit. And now it's beginning to become much more explicit, right? You see the kind of things that like JD Vance is saying, or someone like Senator Eric Schmidt, where it's very distinctively pro-American and defending like the forgotten Americans. Mm-hmm. And so within all of that, it's you have to build up not only political power, but also cultural power, social power to accomplish that. And that's something we totally lack. We don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have a spoil system for our people. And that's more or less what he was elucidating, is that like, no, you kind of have to get rid of the notions of like being against big government. Which it was like, whoa, hold up here for a second, right? Stay with me. Because the big, giant, massive government, the giant managerial state, and the private sector, which is just runs parallel to the managerial state, dominates all of American life. So most people, everything that they have, whether it is the means to be able to provide for themselves and their families, either comes from the massive managerial state or the managerial bureaucracy of ginormous corporations, right? Very almost like single digit percentage of people either own small businesses or own a farm or things like that, which was the baseline for the majority of the country at its founding. But now you're dependent either on the government or the largesse of corporations in order to feed yourselves, but also even just your cultural formation, right? That comes from ginormous corporations that instill in you what you were supposed to believe is true and good and beautiful, right? That comes from Netflix, which is about to acquire Warner Brothers and become a monstrosity the size of Disney. And there's 3 or 4 corporations telling you, all right, all of the historical figures in every historical miniseries we do, like Charlemagne, he was actually black. So was King Alfred, and they were gay too, and maybe trans. We don't know. Like that. That's what like we laugh about it because it's so absurd. But like average people, they see this stuff and they assume what they see on television or streaming services is totally real. And so it forms their moral imagination. And it's like, well, we need to have a counter, revolution within the system, right? Within this massive state and also corporate apparatus, right? It needs to be instead like pro-American.
Right.
And moving toward those things, because right, even if we were able to like just make it go away, like snap our fingers, and this is sort of what John is talking about, where it's like like reinstalling monarchy or things like that, all of the absurd things people like concoct on the internet, like here's what we should do, and it, like that's not going to happen. Like you're not going to be able to snap your fingers and take away right everything after 1933, like that won't happen. But you can very slowly and deliberately and carefully through massive amounts of hard work and organization, right, build a political bloc of Americans that self-consciously, the way they operate and vote is to build and to rebuild America for Americans. And I see that as something from the macro level that is very slowly emerging, very slowly happening, and I think that has the staying power to be able to be able to change things in significant ways, and to rebuild institutions that you can actually trust once again. Right. That is part of it as well. Right. And so like Nate's point about, people being rewarded for having, skin in the game and producing actual tangible results. I think that will happen because you've always had celebrities. You've always had these like personality cults, and they've involved themselves in politics and things like that. And to some degree, I think, the influence on one hand is somewhat overstated, but then on the other, like you said, like with Candace, for instance, alongside the legacy media, right? So half of the country believes anything that they see on TV, and the TV told them, oh, it was actually a MAGA guy that shot Charlie Kirk. And so they all just believe it. Like there are people like you go I mean, if you have to, like, go talk to a complete and total lib, NPR, MSNBC watcher, and if you ask them, like, who killed Charlie Kirk? Like, who is this guy? And they're like, oh, this was a Trump voter. It was a groyper. It was a follower of Nick Fuentes. Like,
I was on
they
campus
still
the day
believe
after,
that
and
today.
that's what they said. That's what they told me. I had students come and tell me, well, it was a right-wing MAGA person who shot Charlie Kirk. And I like it was almost like paradigm shifting for me. Like, wait a second.
Yeah.
That's I as someone who follows the media and the news, like I think no way anyone actually buys that, right? Like, just because Jimmy Kimmel
totally
made a joke, but like, it seems that almost half the country really does just buy it.
They totally do. And like the other side of it then is like Candace and all of the, the Ian Carroll guy, or he should shave his mustache because he doesn't deserve it. But like people like that, right? People like that, they have now, so like half the country thinks it was like a follower of Nick Fuentes or something that killed him. And then like the other half of them believe that like Israel and the Egyptian government and
Donald Trump
and like aliens and everything, like somehow it wasn't a 30-06 bullet. It was like an improvised explosive device that TPUSA planted on it, and they had an army colonel help, and like just the most insane concocted theory. When it's like, I mean, even when I indulge like any degree of like conspiratorial thinking about it, it's like, well, one, like the shooter was there, he had this gun, and Charlie was killed, right? Those are like the things that are absolutely known things. And I'm like, okay, well, like, who is he talking to, right? Who is he talking to on Discord, right? If there were any other actors involved in it, it's like that. But it's like, he's still the shooter. He's still the guy that did it. And you'll have these people who will talk about like ballistics, even though you could tell they've clearly never shot a gun in their life. And 30-06 bullet. Like they sound like Joe Biden talking about guns, right? It's like, an AR-15, that'll blow a hole in the side of a man. And it's like, they have no idea what they're talking about. But so you have like the recent polling, which says that, okay, only about a quarter of the country believes that Tyler Robinson was the shooter, and he did it. And he was a left-wing, nut job that killed him for his trans boyfriend, right? Like, only 1 in 4 people like believe that, and it's like, that's what happened. And it's like, okay, if the official story is true, and I think it totally is, right? And my view of the official story is that like you have these networks of radical Antifa trans people that are operating in Discord and other places that like coordinate this stuff, and they're doing it against ICE too. And it's like, if you had like at least the right, like unified on this point, demanding that Congress act, that Trump act, that the Department of Justice act to roll these people up, right? We would have had that by now, right? You would have had raids on all over the country arresting these people, and that hasn't happened. And she bears, and people like her bear, part of the blame for dividing us in a very crucial moment. So would she be able to swing elections? I mean, maybe in certain races when it comes down to a few points. Yeah. But I do think that overall, like, if you provide people with a vision of the good and a vision for political power being wielded that benefits them as a people, then you can overcome those things, right? And so the reason the GOP Congress is probably going to get demolished in the midterms is they haven't done that. They've done none of those things at all. They've also like even like and part of it is a corollary to this, but even like the Epstein stuff, right? It's like, okay, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was a very bad guy, very terrible. Like, the government's withholding info from us, things like that. But like turning turning Trump's first term into like a referendum on Jeffrey Epstein rather than like using the power of Congress to accomplish things for the American people, right? And creating this sideshow and derailing all of it because you have like a petty beef with Donald Trump. Like that stuff is it's awful, right? And they'll manipulate people with it, right? Yeah. It's like if Donald Trump was really scared that there was bad stuff in there, that he's guilty of doing terrible things with Jeffrey Epstein. Like, do you not think that would have come out during the 4 years that Joe Biden was president? Like, it's just absurd kind of thinking, but like people are easily manipulated by anyone throwing out a wild theory on the internet.
I totally agree. I want to circle back to what it's interesting as this conversation kind of develops. It seemed like when John, your advice, your diagnosis with the epistemological problem and your advice to like get real, touch grass, build things, and then it's almost like these are two sides of the same coin. That there's that side of it, and then when you were talking about, Andrew, is you're like you didn't contradict that, but you basically said yes, and we need a positive vision that we can all get behind, that we can all build. We're desperate for a positive, unifying vision that can actually accomplish things in the real world, politically, culturally, and that requires a lot of work too. That requires strategy. That requires communication. That requires big picture vision. And I see those as kind of being two sides of the same coin. John, did you have anything? Would you want to add to that? I've got some other questions to get into, but I'm wondering if you wanted to add anything into that.
I agree with what Andrew said. I say yes and amen. I think it's actually a both and thing. So I think, and this is just so you know where I'm coming from, this is kind of my political outlook. We do need institutions that can operate at scale to defeat the deep state, or more really the better way to put that is to control the deep state, because you're going to have like a Cincinnatus figure, which is 1 in a million probably, but someone with virtue who's able to ascend. And it might be some ones, it might not just be one person, but a group that's able to have a loyalty to their own people enough that they can feel the power and then destroy it and give it as much back to the responsibility of local regions and families as they can.
You're so the way I look at it for that mission,
we might have, yeah. So the way I look at it is this: I'm going through a conservative book series on my podcast. So I did the Anti-Federalists last month or whatever it was, and then I just did John Taylor of Caroline's critique of Lincolnian nationalism. And I'm working myself through. I'm going to get to the 20th century eventually, and we're going to talk about Sam Francis and all of that. But I think the ideal, and this is an American thing, is federalism. That's what makes America unique. It's small is good. But the thing is, as Andrew rightly stated, we have a Leviathan deep state that's corrupt and evil, and it's developed over a period of time. I don't know that we are going to be able to get rid of it in one administration. This is going to take the long view. So what I'm concerned about is we got Trump in there. We got to expand on what Trump's doing, and we got to build on it. That's what we should be doing instead of just like trashing everything he does. And the H-1B was a great example, because I was reading about that this morning. The Department of Labor secretary made an announcement I wasn't too hot on. She deflected when asked about ending the program. But you also have to realize they're doing what no administration in the recent past has done. They're actually policing the H-1B program, and they're putting not penalties, but they're making it very expensive for new H-1Bs to come over. Okay, let's expand on that. Yeah. That's what I want to do. And I want to see institutions in journalism and politics in every realm to rise up and replace the ones that we don't trust. And so far, if you look at the conservative world, just on journalism, what do you see? The Daily Wire, I guess, has some field reporters. Fox News, I mean, if we want to include them, they're like, what, 30 years old? That's pretty new. Compare that to like the Atlantic or the New York Post or the New York Times that have been around for about 100 years or more. The Blaze. I mean, and these organizations are regularly trashed. And it's like, I don't agree with everything Ben Shapiro says, but can we not have some self-reflection and see the big picture here? we don't have a lot of options. We need to build, expand, develop, band together where we can, and then disagree in a gentlemanly way where we can't. If someone's truly an enemy, we treat them that way. But there's a snap judge reaction to anything that someone on the right tries to build. It must be bad. It must be a tool. It must be a shill for now foreign governments. It's like, we have to be able to start somewhere and build some things here. And then my goal ultimately, and I think this is in the DNA of every true American, is we do want to get back to the Norman Rockwell kind of world as much as we can. We want institutions like the church and the local. I mean, I want to go in to my local grocery store and have it, be called the general store. And I want my 13-year-old to ask advice from the clerk about life and enjoy an ice cream. You know what I mean? They're not going to get that from the Walmart greeter, and they're certainly not going to get it from the Amazon deliverer. I want that, right? And so the question is, how do we get back to that? We have to have a positive vision. It means conforming ourselves to the natural order, trying to drill down and those traditions that we do still have, expand those, promote those. It is going to be on the local level. It's also going to be building on the local level so that we can have an at-scale resistance. And one last thing I'll say is the states' rights tradition, when it was an actual alternative, only made sense because virtuous, strong people were in positions where they wouldn't back down. You look at Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott during Biden made this spectacle of, we're not going to do the border thing that Biden wants us to do. Well, that wasn't real. Trump's in office now. What states are assisting him? I mean, he's a one-man show. These states should have the guts and have the quality of men to be able to stand up. If we don't have those men around anymore, we're not going to have localism or federal or anything really. I mean, we have to produce those men again and get them into those positions. And that's what I want to see happen. I know that's cultivated in experiences on the local level first before it can go national, international, whatever. And so that's what I mean when I'm talking about that. I do see a tradition. I don't know if get me in hot water here, but it may have started more with like the American Independent Party and then gone to like Pat Buchanan to Donald Trump, the MAGA movement and stuff. That is kind of, even though there's disagreements within different figures in that and stuff, I see that as the positive momentum. And that Sam Francis would fit in that of, we're a particular people. We have a severe enemy. We like the Cold War mechanisms that were set up were extended through the war on terror and are now being applied to the American people. Donald Trump's a reprieve. We have to defeat that. Like we have to have priorities here, right? Like that's got to be defeated. I'm willing to solve immigration. And if that means 4 more years of keeping the status quo on Israel, more or less, even though I'm not crazy about that, I've got to have my priorities. Like we're very close to losing our people. And
now you're definitely going to be attacked. The $7,000.
Well, it's true though. And my goal is not to be engaged in foreign entanglements. I like the Washington foreign policy, but I'm just saying, where are your priorities? Like, what are we willing to do? What can we do? And America is only going to exist in pockets if we don't do something, if we don't have the momentum going in our favor. It's already like that in some places. So
I think that's right. And real quick, Andrew, let me, I want to run a question by, I know, Andrew, you got to run, you got a hard stop in just a few minutes.
Oh yeah, John, we only got a few minutes.
Yeah. John, do you have a few minutes after that? Are you a hard stop as well?
Yeah. Let Andrew go and I'll continue after he's gone.
Okay. We can stick around. Well, I'm going to play our ads from our sponsors, and then I've got a question for you, Andrew, and you can
Sounds good.
Go here in just a second. Let's see here.
In 1 Timothy 4:8, the Apostle Paul tells us that physical training is indeed valuable for the Christian life. And while physical fitness is not the most important thing in the Christian life, it is still of great importance, particularly for men. Why? Because God has called you to protect and to provide. Men, you are called to be protectors. Therefore, God is calling you to be strong, spiritually, emotionally, and yes, even physically. Physical fitness is also important because God has called you to provide. Your family needs you to live a long, healthy life. So, get strong and stay fit with Mount Athos. They are a Christian fitness company that uses some of the best natural ingredients. So I've personally been using their supplements for 6 months now, and I'll tell you right now, I am not going back. They are my new supplement brand. So stop giving your money to pagan fitness brands that can't even tell the difference between men and women. Join Mount Athos in creating the next generation of health, strength, and spiritual vitality. Visit athosperform.com/reformation. And don't forget to use code reformation for an exclusive discount today. A Christian home without financial order is a fortress without walls. Dominion Wealth Strategists exists to help families rebuild those walls with clarity and conviction. They offer holistic financial consulting shaped by Scripture, guiding households through budgeting, debt management, savings, life insurance, and more. Dominion provides this counsel entirely for free because their purpose is to fortify the church rather than to profit from its uncertainty. They are the only distinctly reformed full-service financial services brokerage firm in the nation, serving real Christian households with real conviction. Listeners who want their financial lives aligned with their faith and future can visit www.reform.money and schedule a free consultation today. Once again, that's www.reform.money, and tell them that Joshua Hames from Reformation Red Pill sent you.
All right, I want to circle back with you real quick, Andrew, to this idea. We're talking about the need for a positive vision, and a lot of people becoming disenchanted. They're becoming disenchanted with the modern liberal world order, the gay race commie society that they've given us. Yeah. And for that reason, I think people are looking for like a legitimate alternative. People are kind of waking up to the fact that our system, like both Republicans and Democrats, they're both liberals. There's just progressive liberals, and then there's classical liberals. And there might be a few, paleo-conservative leaning types within the ranks, but not many, if any. And so I put Nick Fuentes in the title because I wanted to get your take. A lot of young men are listening to him.
I was waiting for you.
I know. I talked to men all over the country, and like young conservative men on college campuses, and like 85% of them are listening. I'm not saying like 85% are groypers full on it, but he's a part of their diet. He's a part of their diet. A lot of people see that as a huge problem. And what I've kind of realized more and more so, my thought is it's inevitable. Whether you want to say it's a problem or not, his language, some of his ideas, it's inevitable because we haven't been offered alternative visions for the country. And there's only a few people right now who are legitimately offering those alternatives. And so they'll take the bad, they'll eat the meat and spit out the bones. So even young Christian men, they're like, yeah, I'm not crazy about his rhetoric here. I think he goes too far on this issue, whether it's race or the Jews, whatever it is. But he's offering an alternative. And so I wanted to get your take on Nick. What are your thoughts on why do you think so many young men are listening to Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's best explained. Like I watched most of the Piers Morgan interview, and
raw entertainment. That was just raw.
It was very entertaining in various different ways. And I was just reflecting on it, overall and thinking about it from like the meta perspective, that really what you had in someone like Piers Morgan, who is, I mean, this is a guy who got into it with Tucker a few weeks ago, saying that like, oh no, like having the most popular name in London be Mohammed is awesome because like think of how good the food is, and like just totally just this emasculated weakling who is constitutionally incapable of defending himself, his own dignity, the dignity of his nation, and has been and is typical for many people, certainly of that generation, but also in both Britain and America. People that have been steeped in the pieties of liberal egalitarian democracy for the last 60 to 80 years. that you look at someone like that and it's like, okay, it's like if you've ever, left something in your fridge too long and it's like weeks past expired and like some cheese or something. And you open it up and you see there's mold all over it. And it's just this green stuff everywhere. And it's like, well, the reason there's mold is because there's bacteria. It's covered in bacteria. The bacteria is just grown and grown and grown. And and the mold is eating it. Right. And so what I looked at in that interview was the bacteria being eaten by the mold. Right. That's what it was. That you have, sort of the natural predator of the kind of, post-war liberal pieties that Piers was espousing. And he doesn't even realize. The funniest part is like he didn't even realize it half the time when Dick was like trolling him and making fun of him. And
the 6 million question, that was wild to me. Like he said he was Holocaust maximalizing. Like
like he had no idea that he was mocking him the entire time. Oh, really? You believe that? So, but so much of it is like part of the crisis is you've had entire generations of Americans and just focusing on America, but it's more broadly, Western Europe, the whole Anglosphere and so forth, that has been told that, okay, you can't have discrete national interests. You can't have nations. Like you have to accept millions of Muslims, millions of people from the third world, and they are just as British or French or German or American as you've been here, with ancestors since the Mayflower. Ilhan Omar's just as American as you. And the reason why, right, you can't have nations or a particular national interest or a particular national spirit is because Hitler, right? That's like the logic that they've employed for 80 years. And so it has reached the point now, and you could get away with that for a really long period of time because life was good, right? People could still have families and jobs and have aspirations. Young people could have aspirations for the future and life would look good. The prospects for the future would look good. And instead, now you don't have any of that, right? You don't, you have a total disaster. So like anything that was like right wing, right? We can't have that because Hitler, right? Even if it was like a total stretch to make that case, it's like, oh, we need to have feminism because if we don't, that's how you get Hitler. We need to have gay rights because if you don't, that's how we get Hitler, right? That's how it's always sold in this conceptual way. And so when young men, are in their 20s and they're like, oh, I can't even like get a decent middle-class job, even though I've worked hard, I went to college, I've done everything right. I can't get a decent job. All of the women don't want to have boyfriends or get married or even talk to you. So how am I supposed to start a family? Right. Like very real issues. Like then, and they realize, oh, like feminism caused that. And all of the DEI things and all of that. Well, that was caused by this emphasis on white guilt and everything else. And so they see that, and then they hear someone explain it. This is why, right? That all of this stuff that's been foisted on you and on your parents and on your grandparents and everyone else onto our culture has been done purposefully over the course of decades. And now everything is a disaster and your life sucks because of it. And he gains a hearing. People will listen to it.
Right.
Because it's a plausible explanation for everything. And part of it too is the like Zoomer, almost by their very nature, is sort of irreverent or performatively transgressive, right? And this is kind of how humor is always worked, right? You look at and these are like arch boomers now, but like Monty Python, all of those guys, like John Cleese is now like, oh, mass migration is actually maybe bad, and all these things are bad. But when he was doing his thing in the 60s, what were they doing? They were doing transgressive humor, mocking
Christianity and the right.
Beautiful. Yeah. They're attacking Christianity. They're attacking the middle class social mores of Britain.
That's right.
And now that he's nearly dead, he looks back on it. It's like, oh, actually, these things are bad now. And so like, yeah, humor is always transgressive. It's always poking idols in the eye. And so like, well, and it always encroaches on like forbidden topics, right? That's what makes it funny. So, right, what are Zoomers going to joke about, right? The one thing, the few things they're told, you can never tell jokes about that. That's too holy. That's too sacrosanct to ever tell jokes about. So what are they going to joke about? They're going to joke about like racial stuff. They'll tell jokes about Hitler. They'll tell jokes about Jews and everything else like that, because you're not allowed to talk about that. You're not allowed to make fun of these things or tell jokes about these things. So they're going to do it. Like that's how internet culture works. That's how humor works. And so someone like Piers is like totally incapable of recognizing that is the dynamic. So even like the things that Nick says, I don't even know if he like really believes them, or most of the Groypers, the Zoomers, really believe any of them. But the danger always is like anything that you do ironically, you're eventually going to do or be genuinely, right? Like that is what happens, right?
Eventually it stops becoming ironic.
Yeah, you'll like ironically hate Jews and black people and adore Hitler, for the lulz, right? Or like Nick said in the thing, like he really likes the edits, right? And you're eventually going to become sincere in that stuff, right? You're going to become no, I actually really do believe it. And so the reason why you have someone like Nick, and so like even to back up a little bit, like Nick he's like called me out by name on his podcast before and attacked me because I like JD Vance too much and things like that. So it's not like I'm like super sympathetic to him or think he's great or anything like that. But I will at least what I'm trying to do is not like defend him or say that like, oh, he's everything he says is fine, good, but rather bring it, bring the perspective on it and understand like what the dynamics are that are actually going on, why you have a figure like him. So I'm being descriptive more than anything else. Like this is what he is. And so the reason you have that, right, is the reason you have someone going and saying these things and gaining an audience saying these things is because you haven't had any institutional leaders with any institutional credibility, pastors or conservative figures or anyone that had a lot of sway over the last 30 years. Right. None of them would make like the sanitized, reasonable arguments that he makes. Right. You look at the things where people will be like, okay, I'm going to analyze the things he says and kind of filter out all of the really transgressive statements and everything else and just think, okay, what is he saying that is true? Right. What things he's saying, what things are true? And you look at that and you think like nobody has said those things for 30 years. No one would dare speak against feminism, right? No one would dare speak against like the overt anti-white race hate that has occurred over the last 30 years. No one would dare speak about our special relationship with Israel, and so many of these other things. Right. No one who was like reasonable and mature and had lots of virtue No one was doing it. And because, right, if you did, you would be destroyed, right? Your career would be over. I mean, I brought up Sam Francis before, but also like Joseph Sobran or Paul Gottfried or Pat Buchanan. Like these are guys that were good men, and they were very intelligent, very reasonable, rational men. And what they talked about these paleoconservative things, and they were tossed out overnight in the from National Review and from the conservative movement, because these are forbidden topics. You may not speak about them. And so the same thing is true in the church. I mean, I think about, like the things that like John has done over the last several years, just in terms of like fighting DEI and things like that. And it's like, John, I mean, and me too, like we were just like nobodies posting on the internet, and people would listen to us because like we're just telling the truth about stuff, right? We are trying to be faithful and weigh things with equal weights and measures and so forth, and people would listen. But it's like it shouldn't have been me. And it shouldn't have been John saying these things. It should have been like the seminary presidents and the figures in various denominations and the Southern Baptist Convention or the PCA that's saying like, hold up a minute. I think we're like 2020. We're having like a racial revolution right now, and it's like okay to hate white people. Like, are we sure that George Floyd didn't die of an overdose? Like, no one would dare say that ever. And or even just say like, hey, maybe having like 30 million illegal aliens in our country is bad for us. Maybe having 80,000 Somalis in Minnesota is bad for us. Like nobody would dare say that stuff. And so because you won't have the mature, dignified, reasonable, rational men leading in these issues, what do you get? You get, a young man from Chicago who will be maximally transgressive and be as outlandish as he can, because obviously you're going to get more attention the more radical you are, the more extreme you sound, right? That will draw the more eyeballs to you. So like he's a genius in media strategy, right? But I mean, you brought up. I know I have to go.
Almost like on that note, it's almost like you toss out the Pat Buchanan and you get the Nick Fuentes. In some sense, right? Anyway, I cut you off. I know you got to get going. Well, real quick,
I just have one last thing to say.
Yeah.
One last thing to say before I go. John brought up Aaron Wren at a talk. Or no, you brought up.
Yeah.
Everybody brought up Aaron Wren. I'm going to bring him up now. So I was at a conference a few years ago that Aaron spoke at, and one of the things that he said, and he was talking about just kind of the new right or the online right, and it was mostly, younger people that are really online that are at this conference. And one of the things that he said, and he's absolutely right, is the regime media, all of them, they want someone to be the heel. Right. Like in terms of, pro wrestling or whatever, you always have to have a heel. You always have to have the bad guy that everybody can root against. And they desperately want a right-wing heel to be able to attack, to be able to say, this is the extreme guy and you're just like him. And Aaron said, you can't ever be that. Right. You cannot ever be that. And like being the heel, right, it will get you lots of attention. It will get you lots of benefit from being the heel. A lot of people will pay attention to what you have to say, but you are handing them something that they want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, right? The reason I think it seems pretty obvious that Nick has kind of gained so much attention from the media is like they found the perfect heel that they can attack and associate with Donald Trump or associate with an emerging nationalism in America. But I don't think, and for some of the reasons that we've talked about today, like I don't think that strategy is going to actually pay off for them because of the because of the epistemological crisis that is happening, that they don't hold the power over the minds of young people in a way that did even 10 years ago, to be able to shape and form what they think is true and real, and what is morally good or morally bad. They don't have that power anymore. So it's a gambit that they're playing with. But I think at the end of the day, right, what will happen is, I think a few things. Like, one, he will probably mature, and his followers will definitely mature and grow up, and mature out of a lot of the transgressiveness. And yeah, I think what will ultimately occur is sort of like what Nate Fisher was talking about, that people who are actually producing tangible things, like tangible results in the world, that the ones with skin in the game, that they will be the ones that gain currency. And so, right, if he wants to do that, right, then his people will actually produce positive change in elections and many other things. Otherwise it'll be a fad like any other.
Well, but as you leave, would you say Nick Fuentes' contributions, Overton window shifting, but with the good and the bad and the ugly, would you say net positive or net negative?
I really don't know. I think so much has shifted in the last several years, that irrespective of Nick, that I don't know. I mean, I think net positive or negative, I think it just is. Like, I don't think I wouldn't say, like, I mean, some people would be like, they see the things he has said and be like, oh, that's a net negative that is out there. But like, I view it like that was always going to happen. Like, there always was going to be someone like Nick Fuentes when you have this overstuffed, extremely pious, public religion that is actively damaging our people. Like, someone was going to come along and say the things he says and does, particularly in the media environment and social media environment that we have. I think that it was an inevitable circumstance that was going to occur regardless. So he definitely filled that void, or
So you're
filled
saying
that.
he's
that
like
sort of
he's like Thanos. He's inevitable.
You're doing a Marvel movie reference. Come on, Josh. With me, no. I think no, I won't. Yeah, I'm hesitant to say that it's either good or bad. I mean, it's there are good things and bad things with it. Overall, it's sort of a canary in the coal mine, right? Just the phenomenon in general.
I agree.
That gives us a window into where things currently are, with how much our people are sheep without shepherds, how much, and if anything, like I mean, I talk to a lot of pastors and people like that are like really worried that their young guys are listening to Nick Fuentes and things like that, and it's sort of like talking to a parent who's like, oh, my son is listening like 50 years ago. He's listening to all this rock and roll, and it's real, he's being rebellious. And it's like, well, what's that an indication of? Right. Probably that you've let someone else capture your son's heart. Right. You've let someone else lead your son. And it's the same thing now, where it's like, well, what is he saying that you could say this is true, and he's saying it and you're not, right? That's why you're losing your young men, and you're worried about this. Well, that means you need to step up your game, right? In terms of fathers and pastors and everyone else, like you need to honestly reevaluate the liberal post-war egalitarian democratic order and all the pieties that are contained there, and your adherence to them, because it's going to take a lot of courage to push back against those, but the reward is you'll keep your young men. And so that's how I look at it. Is
that's fair,
right?
That's fair.
We need to do a better job. We need to be much more honest about the realities that young men are facing, and encourage them in their own particular circumstances and how they individually can make it better. Because normally what happens is, like, young guys will go to their pastors that are usually older and say and explain the whole situation, where it's like, things are really bad. I can't find a place to live. I can't find a job. I can't find a wife. And what they'll be told is, well, you just need to like man up, and you need to go like turn your application in and shake the manager's hand with a firm handshake and just talk to the girls. And it's like, no, if I talk to the girls, like they'll treat me like I'm a rapist. Like, why that doesn't happen anymore. And so rather than like giving them the kind of like boomer answers that worked that totally were true in their world, they totally were true. Yeah. Like, go to the manager, tell them you're going to work hard, and then go work hard. Right. That worked in 1980. It doesn't work anymore. Rather than doing that, just listening to them, right? Listening to the problems that they see, and reevaluating where the world actually is today, and having the courage to confront it. That should be the lesson, rather than like freaking out when you see, Piers Morgan interviewing Fuentes and like all of his really outlandish statements. Like, rather than freaking out about it, instead looking at it and thinking, okay, what should I be doing? Right? What should I be saying that I'm not? So that's my thoughts on it.
No, that's good. I'm excited to get your take, John. I know you got to run. Hopefully, whoever appointment you had for your 1:30 hard stop isn't too mad at me. So
no, I said 1:30 because I knew I'd go over it. So it's actually 1:45.
Good deal. Well, I'm
thanks.
gonna get out of here, and I'll keep chatting with you, John. I'd love to get your take on this. I know you got to get going here soon too. But hey, thanks for coming on. All right. I want to get your take. Andrew broke it down for me. He broke it down for us there. But I want to get your take on some of that. Like, why do you believe Nick Fuentes has gained the audience he has? And if you have any direct thoughts on some of the claims and some of the direction that Andrew took, I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
I think I agree with most of what Andrew said as far as dynamics are concerned. I think there's an extra thing I want to build on that he didn't mention, and I don't know if he would agree with it or not, but I do think it's very important. Nick isn't just popular because he will say things that no one else will say. And that I'm not sure it's no one else. It's perhaps rare for someone to talk about something like white replacement, but it's not like no one talks about that. There's people, and they may have different philosophies a little bit than Nick. Guys like Steve Bannon have talked about that. Obviously, he's much older, probably doesn't appeal to the same kind of demographic. There's women who have, like, I for some reason thought of Lauren Southern, who's now in a really strange place from what I understand, but she was talking about that at one time. I think there's guys in the administration, even now, JD Vance has talked about this. It's not really like, Jared Taylor, who's someone who's, I would say a more sophisticated version of a white, race advocate. I don't know if I don't know what term he uses of himself, but there's the VDARE website. And I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of different people on this spectrum of everything from, paleocon right to even some libertarians to alt-right figures. I mean, remember Richard Spencer and Milo Yiannopoulos when they were supposedly the top of the alt-right in 2015-16, and they were talking about that issue quite a bit. I still remember there was a Richard Spencer advertisement where it was on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there. I remember watching it and I was like, whoa. And this is something that now you'll probably see on Twitter quite a bit, where it's like the montage of, look at all these white people doing amazing things, scientists and builders and so forth. And the message of this Richard Spencer video was, we don't need them, they need us. Meaning white people don't need minorities, minorities need white people. And I remember it was a piece of propaganda, according to, YouTube put all kinds of restraints on it, but it was, if you click through the restraints, you get to watch the video. And I've been watching from a distance. I've been keeping an eye on guys like that and Nick Fuentes from that time period. I mean, I've been aware of them. I haven't been like a devoted follower of Nick. I think from the beginning, there's nothing about him that really appealed to me for a variety of reasons. But I think that the thing that sets Nick apart is, one of the things, at least, this is the one I want to focus on a little bit, is Zoomers in particular are stripped of their identity. They're deracinated.
Yeah.
They grew up in a world where there's not much in terms of honor and hierarchy and discipline. I mean, why did so many of them at one point, go to Jordan Peterson? And this was also younger millennials, right? But now he's on the outs with them. But at one time, it was like, no one told us to make our bed. This guy's telling us to do it, right?
Yeah.
And Nick, I think, channels a lot of that identity vacuum and the angst and the feeling of lostness and all, like the feeling of wanting to belong somewhere and not having it and being online in a chronic way. Nick is like made for that, because what Nick does, if you ever watch his show, is people will send him money at the end of his show. They'll give him questions, and Nick will use that opportunity to insult his audience.
It is wild.
It happens very regularly. Now you listen to that and you think, why would anyone insult their audience? I would probably lose a lot of my audience if I started doing that. And it's not who I am, and I would never do it. It's wrong. Nick has a weird kind of cultish audience. The Groypers, the ones who are hardcore Nick fans, it's like they like it. They want to be insulted. They want a guy who's going to say, you got to rape, steal, and kill for Nick Fuentes. Take the pledge. They want someone who's not just transgressive, because Nick is transgressive. He is your terms are acceptable to the liberal. Whatever the liberal is, it's like Nick is that. Nick takes that and he's opposite. And to what extent he's serious and he's kidding. And so I don't know all of that. I do know that Scripture has a lot to say about our tongues, about coarse jesting, about edifying words. Nick is he has a pornographic mind. He says sick things, disgusting things, attacking things, very foul language. I mean, I don't want to camp out on that. A lot of other people have camped out on that. So I do think that, but that is a part of it. Like, he's transgressive. He's saying things you're not supposed to say. But I think there's something else there too. I think Nick is kind of like the guy who made it. So he's an incel. He's called himself that several times. He's a short, half Hispanic kid who's half white, half Hispanic. He's kind of like he's typical of like Gen Z. He's like sort of, there's a lostness to that. It's kind of a tragic story in a way. It's like, where do I belong? I don't have a family that to call my own. And here I'm being banned from YouTube. It's like kind of like the story that Zoomers have had of themselves, and many of them at least. And then it's like, let's just lash out against the system that did this to us. I think Nick channels that, and I think he creates an online hierarchy space where he's at the top of the hierarchy. And so for people wanting a hierarchy who don't have it, that's where they fit in. It's like a place of belonging. I'm now part of an army. I'm in the Groyper army. I'm a lieutenant. I'm a whatever in this army. And it's someone who channels my same frustrations and has actually walked the walk. He also can't find a girl. He also feels like other people are pushing him down and hoping he doesn't succeed. Well, you know what? I'm going to try to make sure he succeeds. That's kind of a revenge against the plight that they're in. I think that you have to understand that, in my opinion, to understand Nick. In addition to everything Andrew said, which I think is true, Okay, he's saying some true things, but I think you could say all those true things. So maybe this is where I disagree with Andrew. I think you could say all those things in a very Christian way, that whatever he does get right, whites are being replaced. Yes, Israel does have influence in the United States elections. So does Qatar, by the way. I did a dive on that this morning, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know the half of it. So do a lot of other countries, which I don't like any of that. Nick says some true things about some of those things. I don't buy the idea, though, that that's the sole reason he's popular, though, because I think that's the assumption that some people seem to have. I don't know if Andrew goes there, but that, like, if you stripped him of the true things he said, people wouldn't listen. I think they still might. I don't know. Maybe that is necessary for it, but it's like, I just think there's another component to this that also makes sense of why he's popular. So that's my take on Nick. I don't see him as a net positive for the conservative side at all.
Interesting.
I do hope he matures. I do hope that, I hope that he repents and puts his faith in Jesus Christ and comes to know the Lord. That's what I want to see. Then we'll be brothers. But
yes, amen. Yeah, I've been trying to parse that out for myself. I still remain a bit agnostic. I think I've been trying to tease it out and kind of figure out what is it that makes someone believe that he's a net positive in spite of the crassness, the transgressiveness, all these things that we've been discussing. And I think what I'm gathering, and I would love to get your take on this, my thinking is that whether or not someone, because here's the positive benefits that someone would attribute to him would be, well, there are very few, if any people in the current media landscape that have that have been so instrumental in moving the Overton window. I think Matt Walsh is someone else, and for the first time in my lifetime, the Overton window is shifting in the right direction. It seems to have always been on a leftward drift. And for the first time ever, it seems to actually have halted and now going back the other direction. And that is, I think it's hard to overestimate just how important that is, the business of moving the Overton window, because the Overton window is the canary in the coal mine that actually allows political progress, like actual on the ground political progress, to be made, because politicians, they listen to the people. They have to. Well, ostensibly, that's how it's supposed to work. But the politicians listen to the people. And when the people can actually start speaking their minds and they speak it loudly, then the politicians start listening. So a lot of people who would put Overton window shifting as a really important aspect of, the conservative movement, like things that are happening, would say that, okay, Nick has said all these transgressive things. He's, he's not virtuous, all these different things that you brought up. But the Overton window shifting, along with, I would say that's one element. And the other question that I think a lot of people, that I'm realizing is, I think whether or not a person believes that Israeli influence in American politics is a huge issue is what determines whether or not they believe that Nick is a net positive or a net negative, because that's like his main issue, is like exposing that and making that the main thing. And so it seems to me that I've met a lot of young people, Zoomers in particular. I don't know if it's because they listen to Nick or they've done research elsewhere, but that has become like a primary issue for them. And so they'll take the meat and spit out the bones with someone like Nick, because he's moving the Overton window on all these issues, including this big one for them, which is Israeli influence in American politics. What's your take on that kind of diagnosis?
I think you're right to frame it the way you are, that the moving the Overton window has become a very important thing. And one person told me not long ago that we're not going to go after Nick because he's sinning in the right direction. And I look at that and I think, I want to sort of define further what the Overton window is, perhaps for the sake of the discussion, because I think if we're not clear on what that is, it's hard to even approach this. The Overton window is really the terms of acceptability based upon public perception and opinion. So your public values, the things that people will shame, it's really an honor shame dynamic. Let's make an example. Dave Rubin, right? He had this post about his surrogacy, and I went after it pretty hard when it happened. There was like the who's who of conservative media was coming out to congratulate him on this. And that was only maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. And the Overton window had been pushed so hard by the left. In other words, we had been so deluded into thinking that this kind of thing was normal that we accepted it, that even supposedly social conservatives accepted this as somehow normative. So, and that's what the Overton window is. What is normative? And then what is abnormal? What should be shamed? What should be what is negative on our culture? With Nick, you might be able to find some issues where it's like, well, he's right about this. And so he's, for example, let me give you an example of this. Nick is often highlighted for saying hateful things about women. And some of the things he says are downright disgusting from a Christian point of view. Other things he says, where he's just talking about basic differences, are very true. That men and women are different, and that men are the ones that God designed to be leaders. Women are the ones that are more nurturing. So Nick says that kind of stuff too. Now, the question that I think for Christian conservatives that I would pose is, what should be the positive value system that a society embraces on the topic of men and women, right? So, and it should be what I just described. And it should also be, in addition to that, I just read an article about this, men ought to be paternal. So there's limitations that men have. They're not just brute strength, and they're not just living to serve themselves. They're not just doing whatever they want. They don't just use women as objects, which is something that Nick does quite a bit in his, at least he uses language and description that implies that. No, men actually should be virtuous. They should be gentlemen. They should be, like the knights of old. Like we should be striving for the best of what our society has to offer and going back to that. We don't go there without really the light of Christianity. That's been our society's, I think it was Russell Kirk who said, it's Christianity and the gentleman that built Western society, European society in general, those two things. So does Nick fit either of those things when he talks about that subject? Is he being a Christian? Is he being and I'm picking only one subject here, but I think this is a good one to pick. And I think the answer you have to come back with is not really. Is he characterized, when he talks about women, is he characterized by treating them in an understanding way, in a way that values the contributions they actually do or should make? Is he, despite the fact that they've been so affected by feminism and have believed these lies, is there a care for how do we get them off of that? Because we need them, because we need our civilization to survive. We need to have parents. We need to have children. Nick is more revolutionary, and at least the things I've seen him say about that. Maybe someone can show me clips where he's said otherwise. I know, I went online and I posted 3 clips of Nick. This was a few months ago. And I don't, think about Nick. I don't talk about Nick much,
Sure.
but it was right when he was, I think, on Tucker. Maybe, no, it was right before that. I don't remember what happened. He was being mainstreamed somewhere. And so I just posted these 3 clips, and it was Nick making these homosexual, like he was saying marriage is gay, these references to like marriage and gay, diminishing marriage. And he didn't just do it once. He did it at least 3 times. And there's something tongue in cheek. There's something transgressive. There's something approaching humorous about it. I remember Joel Webbin implied that I was being dishonest. And the reason was because he didn't even imply it. I think he basically said it. But the reason was because there was a clip of him also saying that marriage is good somewhere else. And I'm like, this is the thing about Nick though, right? And I think this has me sometimes thinking he's somewhat of an actor, because he can get on like Tucker or Piers or these other shows, and he's like a different Nick. And then you'll see him on his show. Like I remember after Charlie Kirk died, and I was like, who is this guy? I remember watching this guy a year ago, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then it didn't take long, and the Nick with all the F-bombs and everything else started coming out again. So it's hard to pin him down at times. But what I know is this: our words do matter. And when I was going after Big Eva, I remember I would clip these guys saying terrible things. And the defense was always, well, look at what they said over here. They signed the statement of faith, didn't they? They believe the same thing you do, John. You're just picking on them. You're just mean. You don't understand. And I had the same exact reactions against me if I ever say anything about Nick. It's like the same exact lines sometimes. And I think that we ought to be consistent. And I think Nick has, when you have an audience that big and you have people that potentially could become unhinged, that aren't mentally there, and you're giving them very violent things, even telling them to rape, kill, steal for you, to basically be users of women. Don't be surprised if someone does it, Don't be surprised when they do that kind of thing. So the cap on this to me is, I think that for whatever good that Nick does, I think there's also harm he does. And it's part of a prudential discussion to weigh out, is it one or the other? But because he's operating in right-leaning circles, because he's, and this is a lot of analysis has said he's trying to tap into Charlie Kirk's audience, to audiences that did have more virtuous leaders. I see that as a threat. I see that as a liability. If he was doing this on the left more, it would be probably a little bit of a different story. They already have dirty comedians. They already do all terrible things. And it's like, well, you're moving them into maybe being aware of some things that they're not, like white replacement and so forth. But because he's operating by attacking institutions on the right, ripping them down. I'll give you one last example. The whole threatening about Gavin Newsom, like potentially voting for Gavin Newsom over JD Vance. I think if he's willing to blow up the Republican Party, in the last two elections, he did not vote for Trump. He's a political liability too. I don't know why that's not talked about more. It's like we're got to tiptoe around him or cater to him. Like, no, this guy, he's not a team player. This is a volatile guy. He's erratic. He's not consistent. His personal relationships with people, even look at him and Tucker. It's like it falls apart. It comes together. Look at him and Candace. He's not the kind of guy that you can build with. He's very much a one-man show. And that is a liability for just about any group. I don't care who you are. So I view him that way.
Yeah. On that note, it seems to me that like being an edgelord is just kind of in his bones. And so like, even as the Overton window shifts, I sense and I suspect that he'll try. He won't like, oh, here's my new team. I think it'll be like, okay, now how can I take it even further? How can I be outside? He kind of like, it seems to me that he kind of thrives as the underdog, as the guy who's kind of outside the system throwing.
Well, look what's happening now. Look what's happening right now. Ian Carroll is going in on him hard because he's not anti-Israel enough right now.
Right.
And Nick is like, oh, this is low IQ anti-Semitism. I wasn't ever down for that. Well, Nick has a history though of engaging in that kind of low IQ stuff. I mean, I remember when JD Vance, this isn't really anti-Semitism, but I mean, he would say Charlie Kirk was, I mean, before he would say terrible things about Charlie Kirk, and it was like everyone's owned by Israel, right? Charlie Kirk included. I remember at the funeral, JD Vance is a pallbearer, and Nick can't stand JD Vance, thinks he's owned, and just, he's terrible. So JD Vance is a pallbearer. He was friends with Charlie Kirk. And Nick is like, well, this is just the JD Vance show. They're setting up JD Vance to be the guy, the next torchbearer for MAGA. And that it couldn't have been that him and Charlie Kirk were just friends. It had to be this nefarious thing that they're trying to do a political thing at Charlie Kirk's funeral to make you like JD Vance more. And it's like, and that's the kind of stuff that we were talking about earlier with, and that's such a minor example, but it's like all over the right-wing space now with these personalities. Everything's an op, everything's conspiratorial. We got to read into everything. And it's like some of the obvious, like maybe they were friends, like that's not it.
Couldn't be.
And so Nick has, I think, been operating in that space. As soon as he's getting mainstreamed now, more so, you see now people wanting to attack him, wanting to, in their minds, run to his right, but they're really just saying, you're now bought and paid for. You're saying what Israel wants you to say.
Yeah.
Because it's a purity spiral. And if you think that's pushing the Overton window, okay, I don't look at it that way. I don't think that's pushing the Overton window, that kind of a purity spiral.
Yeah.
I think that's actually setting us up to lose some elections in addition to other things. And I don't think for Christians, I don't think it's a wise thing. Now, if you have people in your church that are listening to Nick and stuff, don't freak out about it. I do think, though, that is something that pastors probably should be addressing if they find that out, that someone's very influenced by this guy. What is it that you like about him? Just start the question there. Like, what do you like? Let the guy talk, find out what it is. Maybe give him some better voices to listen to. There's other political voices out there that they could be listening to Aaron McIntyre or Jesse Kelly, two Christians who are also talking about political matters. Yeah, they're not the same as Nick. Okay, but they're going to be superior when it comes to virtue and things. They could be listening to you, obviously, or Andrew or myself or so many others. So engage that topic with them. Don't just brush it under the rug like it's no big deal, but also don't freak out. That's how I look at it. Like it's like if you had someone in your church who is watching a lot of really rated R stuff, and you just find out about like the kind of Netflix stuff they're watching and what they're putting into their mind. Philippians 4, man, you're the pastor. You guard their souls, it says in Hebrews. You should have a conversation about that, right? It's not like it's not off limits, because actually that's your job as the pastor, to try to help them. So
yeah, two things on that I've been thinking through is like, I think we're just at a point where, and I'm not saying you're saying this, by the way, but we're reaching a point where, or we've reached the point where the finger wagging doesn't work at all for Zoomers, it seems. I don't want to say at all. That's not actually true, but like for the most part, like, hey, you shouldn't do this because they're naughty or because they're not virtuous or something like that. And I think part of the reason why the finger wagging doesn't work, they're all looking at many of these young men are looking at arguments. They're being exposed to ideas and arguments that they've never encountered. And unfortunately, a lot of the attack is it's leftist framed, it's left coded. So like what they like about Nick, they're actually right about. Like they are discovering the post-war consensus. They're discovering somebody who's willing to blaspheme the gods of the post-war consensus. And then they're getting, whether it's mentors or advisors or spiritual advice from people who are like actually attacking him but they're bought into a lot of the liberal paradigm. So they have a distrust of the very people who would be kind of finger wagging and trying to get them to stop. And what I am kind of advocating for is like, no, I don't think Nick is Voldemort. I think that a lot of what you said is absolutely right, that he's not a virtuous man. You can tell that just by his speech alone. He's not a virtuous man. I would venture a guess that someone who speaks like that is not virtuous in his personal life either. And we are desperate. We need to be led by virtuous men. And the sad thing is, and this kind of plays into it. So, well, at least on that note.
But I'm saying I think his lack of virtue is part of the appeal. That's what I'm trying to say.
For a lot of young men, I think you're absolutely right. But when it comes to the arguments themselves and the finger wagging, I think that like the arguments and the ideas, they must be addressed. We can't say, no, you can't think that way about race, or you're not allowed to think that way about Israel or whatever. It's
and that's what I've been trying to help sort of foster positive vision. That's why I brought up paternalism as a limit on patriarchy, or not a limit, but a guide, a channel for patriarchy. It's why when I talk about race issues, I talk a lot about shared experience, and there's limitations to the bioreductionist stuff. So
yes.
I
think you've done a lot of good work in actually addressing like the substance and not attacking from a left-wing frame. That's something that I've appreciated.
Well, I'm to the right of Nick. That's the thing. I mean, this is if right means in an American right scale, if it means commitment to the natural order as it's mediated through tradition. I mean, Nick doesn't like Protestantism. He wants America to be this Catholic place. He hates the South. Talks about how much he hates it. So I'm like, I'm for the Southern Protestant architects of much of what we've inherited, and obviously what Scripture teaches. So, I think one thing I left out too, and I would just mention it real in brief. I don't know exactly how popular Nick is. I know he's popular, but I know there was a story, you probably saw it the other day, about his online engagement and how it appears there are engagement farms in foreign countries. within like the first 30 minutes of him posting something that all of a sudden just spread it everywhere, and it sort of broke algorithms and got him to where he is in part. And I was reading that it was a data firm analysis of Nick's social media footprint, and I just thought, it's ironic to me, this guy his whole thing's America first, and to have these foreign interests that are dedicated to him. That's a very strange thing that I feel like should make people suspicious. But if you study Cold War history, or even go back before that, I mean, the Japanese did this to us in World War II. There's always a fracture line in our country over race, more so than by class, right? If you wanted to divide America, the Soviets knew. Some of the civil rights movement stuff there was Soviet fronts involved in some of that. And I think that our enemies know that that's a weak point, and so they want to divide. And so I'm not saying it because I don't know, but it is very possible that pattern has continued, and you have people on the right who do have some of our foreign interests interested in dividing Americans up. I'm suspicious of that being the potential motive. Otherwise, I don't know. There's
Sure.
certainly a motive there somewhere, though, that you have these foreign bots or bot farms or just people in foreign countries that are interested in this.
That is an interesting line to investigate. As we close out the discussion, the thing that, as I've been talking about this in my little friend groups, and we get together over cigars and whiskey and solve all the world's problems and talk to everything,
Right.
But something I keep coming back to is, I think one reason outside of everything that we've just said, one major reason that young men are turning to someone like Nick is because Protestants and the evangelical Christian world have just utterly failed to produce like professionals in the realm of politics, like the culture war and politics. Professionals who are deeply Christian and committed to a Christian vision for all of life and for our nation. It's just so few. There's just so it's wild. And in fact, you see most of the people who are in the political commentary world, there are papists. Like there's so few of them are Protestants. And you mentioned Orrin McIntyre. I really have appreciated his commentary. In fact, for a lot of young men who like Nick, I typically would say like someone who is more level and seems to be, at least from what I can tell, seems to be a virtuous person. I point them to someone like Orrin, because he's someone who would be on the dissident right, who's very sharp politically, and he's got some great instincts, and I've appreciated it. In his book, I just finished it. It's really, really good. But I think that we have a huge problem in that we have not produced political commentators. We haven't produced like strong politicians. And I think a lot of that, there's a lot of theological reasons, I think, that kind of lead to that. But for whatever the reasons are, we just haven't produced those kind of men, like high caliber political theologians, political commentators, politicians in general. And it's killing us. I think it's killing us. And so part of what I'm hoping to do, and I think you do this too, John, is as I have making a career out of like theology, theology podcast / political commentator / kind of doing some evangelism and stuff like that, content creation. My hope is to really mobilize the next generation to start applying their faith in politics and in culture. Like the culture war is not tangential. Like it is where the battle for the heart of our nation is raging the hottest. It's like, have you read C.S. Lewis's Ransom trilogy?
No.
Oh man, that should be required reading, man. It's so good. But he kind of Lewis in the third book, I won't ruin it, but he kind of talks about this kind of ongoing battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness that kind of recapitulates through generations and through epochs and eras. And the culture war it's where that battle is raging the hottest. It's not, it is part of our duty to like go into the culture war with a Bible in our hands and a "Thus saith the Lord" on our lips, and to actually engage and win. We can win. The gates of hell will not prevail. So part of what I do, and I know part of what you do, is equip people for that. So I really appreciate that. What do you think about that as we wrap this up? That thesis that like part of the reason that people are flocking to Nick is just we haven't produced high caliber men who people can turn to.
I think there's some truth to it. I think I'm reluctant to. I'm careful when I blame the church, I guess, so to speak. I know this is something that I witnessed on the left for years, was like the church is always the problem and stuff. And you're not saying that, but I think pastors are going to be pastors. They're not going to be doing necessarily what someone like a Nick Fuentes is doing.
Right.
I do think there are people like yourself who should rise up out of a Christian setting and do those kinds of things. And so I'm very grateful for you, Josh, and what you're doing. I think there are guys out there trying to do some of this stuff, but
no question that it's happening now. It's just, I feel like we're late to the party almost.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned about Roman Catholics, and we could also say Jewish people being overrepresented in conservative think tanks and political organizations, that's been the status quo since like the 1970s, at least.
That's what I mean. Like this is a perennial problem.
Yeah. And there's multiple explanations for why that is. Some of it's a class thing, especially evangelicals tend to operate on the middle class. Like I was thinking the other day in the church that I attend, which is kind of a standard evangelical level church, how many professionals are there? So business owners, lawyers, doctors, judges, political officials, not many. In fact, I think we have like one or two people who own their own business. When I was a kid, I remember there were more. We had like 2 town supervisors and a judge and 2 lawyers, but we don't have those anymore. And a lot of people are just working for the man. They're not, you get married young, you kind of find a job that's got some stability and you keep going. Whereas I think in some of these other cultures, like for instance, I spent time working when I did furniture repair. I would go into these Hasidic communities sometimes, and they're always studying. They are just, even the Hasidics, Jews are just so bent on, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. You've got like 2 options. Or a businessman or something. Yeah. And that's just the way their culture is. So they're going to end up in the upper echelon more so. I think Roman Catholics also have something like that going on. They're typically in the Northeast, especially Roman Catholics tend to be cops and firemen. Irish and Italian cultures, they tend to be totally fine having masculine figures who use force. Whereas Protestants, at least in this region, there's a tendency to be more pacifistic. And so I don't know what the full reason for that is, like why there's this difference. There is a difference though. Yeah, for sure. And I think you're absolutely right that we do need more Protestants, because that is what made up the foundation of our country. I mean,
we used to produce the top minds. Like, we used to do that.
They were all Protestant.
Yeah.
They were, and that has fallen over a course of time, and immigration has something to do with a lot of things, but we can do something about it. That's the good news. And it's not too late to start now.
Well, and that's why, and I'll plug your book, Against the Waves. Like, I think young men, if you've got the brains for it, and you've got the grit and you've got the hard work, like, be studying, constantly be reading. His book, Against the Waves, is a great kind of Men of Issachar, Issacharian book to kind of like tell you what are the problems facing like what our liberal world order. How do we understand it? How do we address these problems? Keep studying, keep reading, and learn how to apply what you're learning. Synthesize it with the Word of God, with the Scriptures, and with the state of politics and culture. Be able to learn how to put those things together. Write articles. Start podcasts. Some people say, "Oh, the world doesn't need another podcast." You know what? If you're good, do it. Like if you've got the grit, like get up and do it. We need virtuous men to step up to the plate. And I'll say Nick is, speaking of Nick Fuentes, he actually is pretty good at communicating on a very basic level. Yes. Which is maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't really listen to him much, but like he speaks on that kind of working class level, and he speaks Zoomer language. If you can do that and speak the lingo, understand how to do it without using a lot of filler words and having a good stream of consciousness that actually makes sense at the end, then we need you out there. Go start a live stream. Do what Josh is doing. That's great. Well, I appreciate the conversation. I think we need a lot of the guys on the right, especially on the Christian right. There's so many young men who are just looking for direction, and I'm hoping and praying to be able to point people to guys like you, guys like Andrew, who represent like virtuous men who love the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's not a show, right? For you or for guys like Andrew or other guys on our team. We may have our disagreements on this or that, but ultimately we're on the same side. We're on team kingdom of Christ, and we are seeking to advance his kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. And so I genuinely think, like I said, I'm not the guy who's going to say, don't listen to this guy, don't listen to that guy. But I am going to say that make sure that you are filling your mind, like that you're not filling your mind with somebody who has displayed that they're not virtuous. Like if you're going and you're getting some geopolitics, okay, that's great. Then let's talk about it together and talk about it in community with your friends and that sort of thing. But be sure that you're filling your mind first and foremost, obviously, with the word of God, but like if you're seeking to emulate somebody, make sure that person is virtuous. Make sure that person is worth emulating. And so I would say that's kind of where I can leave it. And I'll leave the last word with you, John, if you've got anything you want to plug or anything else you want to say.
No, I'm grateful for you, and just keep doing what you're doing, Josh. I really am inspired. I see you all the time on, I feel like every social media platform. The algorithm favors you, so keep it up.
Well, that's been just like an insane amount of grit for the last, just pumping stuff out for the last bit. But I appreciate that, man. And guys, we are launching our Castle Grounds Club. We're doing a book club. Our first book that we're doing is It's Good to Be a Man by Michael Foster. And, we talk a lot about politics. We talk a lot about culture, but ultimately, kind of like we were talking about in this episode, if we're going to take our country back, it's going to be through virtuous men who love the Lord Jesus Christ, and they understand what it means to be a man to begin with. So that's going to be, the book club is launching early next year in January. So guys, join the club. It's $10 a month. And we've got a special package that's ending at the end of the year if you want to do a lifetime membership. So we're doing a book club. We've got a community. We got lots of good stuff in there. We've even starting a fitness club. So if you want to get swole, come on, jump in. Anyway, we'll leave it there, guys. Actually, John, would you pray for us? Pray for my audience, and then we'll close it like that.
Lord, we thank you so much for this time as we discussed some important matters. We do pray, Lord, for our country. We pray that you would have just men rise up who love you, and that there would be a revival, Lord, a revival of your truth, of your gospel, that even people like Nick Fuentes, who we spent a little bit of time talking about, and I think of Candace Owens, I think she was mentioned, and whoever else, Lord, that we talked about who doesn't know you as their personal Lord and Savior. We just pray that they would come to know you and have a born again experience where they repent of their sins and you come into their life, Lord, through your Holy Spirit. We just pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. That's a good word, just to pray for even the people we were talking about, man. Well, guys, go follow John. He is awesome, and I've appreciated his work a ton. And we'll have you back on soon. This is fun. So, all right, guys, you guys know the charge. Get out there and build, defend, and expand the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ.